Peace, peace. Akili Damone Height here, and this is a day in the life of a writer. So, what I'm doing now, I'm going through some of my old journals. Um, I look at this as data mining my own data because this is information that I wrote down over the last several months and years. And the process of mining is finding valuable tidbits, finding jewels. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So let me put on my glasses so I can see. All right. Uh, right now I have a handful of my, probably half a dozen journals. So all the journals that I like to get these vintage looking journals. Makes me feel a little bit more important. Like I'm writing some type of history that's gonna live on. This sticker here, that's the ancient flower of life. If you are familiar with what Terrence Howard has been talking about, this is sacred geometry. I have this sticker just to kind of remind me of what it's all about. What reality is. This is my current journal that I'm writing. I also have that. So as I mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have like 8 journals right here, right now. I have probably like about 8 to 10 more in the other room. But yeah, it's a culmination of just a lot of information that I've come across over the years, whether it's come through me, whether it's some information that I've researched. And my goal is to use it all. So I was looking through a journal entry from December of 2017 where I was talking about artificial gene synthesis. So not specifically artificial intelligence, but artificial gene synthesis. And what I wrote here is it's sometimes known as DNA printing, and it is a method in synthetic biology that is used to create artificial genes in the laboratory. So in other words, we're talking about cloning. There is a element of cloning in my story. LUCID, the antagonist, his name is Dr. Amma, and he is a purveyor of clones. So I got that information from just doing random research years ago, and I thought that was a good idea to talk about cloning and specifically artificial gene synthesis. What this is specifically is synthetic DNA. One thing that I read an article probably back in 2013 about synthetic DNA being it's patentable. So that means that it's considered intellectual property. So ideally, any clones that are produced, that are created, are the property of someone or some organization. In other words, they're slaves. So just like this journal is my property, so can a clone be considered property. I also wrote back in 2017, December 2017, about the D-wave quantum computing. So quantum computing has been around for a long time. Well, I don't know how long, but at least 10 years, maybe longer. And they've been working on it. And they have been reaching breakthroughs this year in 2024. I believe IBM has their version 2 out, came out a few months ago. But one interesting thing, so just basically, what is quantum computing? Classical computing, the computing that we use today, it runs on binary. So binary means two. So that means an electron or an electrical pulse can be in one of two states, either on or off. So that's where we get the concepts of zeros and ones. So zeros and ones make up binary. Zero off, one on. That's the way I'm communicating with you now. It's just a series of binary code that's stacked on top of each other that create this application that forms this video that you're watching now. So just to recap, classical computing runs on binary, which is two. The key concept is it can either be on or off. It can't be both. It can't be on and off. But what quantum computing is, they run on what's called qubits. They can be in multiple states at the same time. So for example, those bits can be both on and off at the same time. So what is that called? That's called superposition. So quantum superposition is just the concept of being in multiple states or multiple places simultaneously at the same time. So what that means to computing itself is it's really a breakthrough. It is not even computing in the sense that we understand it today. One of the repercussions of quantum computing is that whatever our standard encryption is today, what is it, 256-bit, which is military grade encryption. That's the encryption that we use when we log on to our online banking, and we trust that our information is going to be secured. Well, quantum computing will snap that, theoretically. Quantum computing can break all forms of encryption that we know today. So one important fact about quantum computing, there's a concept or there's a principle or a law called Rose's law. Rose's law means that qubits can double every 12 months. So if you're familiar with classical computing, the concept of Moore's law, which means that whether it's storage space or computing speed or computing power doubling every 18 months, well, Rose's law says quantum computing doubles every 12 months. The speed, the capacity, the functionality. However, it's been updated, and this was as of 2017. It was updated. So now they're saying that it increases or it doubles every 3 months. When I jotted these notes down, that was roughly 7 years ago. So just do the math. Doubling every 3 months, 7 years ago. So that's once a quarter. So that's 4 times a year. So so 7 years ago, it's roughly doubled 28 times, if I'm doing my math correctly. So that's just the accelerated pace that quantum computing is developing at this moment. And what does that mean? We're very familiar at this point with artificial intelligence, right? And obviously, artificial intelligence is advancing at such a rapid pace, it's crazy. Couple that with quantum computing. So if you stack artificial intelligence on top of quantum computing, we can't even imagine what the world is going to look like 50 years from now, much less 100 years from now. So check out the IBM Q. And as I mentioned, I believe they're on version 2 at this point. But back in 2017, IBM was like on the forefront of quantum computing, and they had something called the IBM Q. So what I wrote down here is that these quantum computers utilize the concept of quantum mechanics to create supercomputers that can open interdimensional doors or portals, which are basically parallel universes. So this is an example of how I am mixing science with fiction, right? This is science fiction. However, what is the difference between science fiction and truth or reality? It's only a matter of time. When I was a kid, and this was actually before my time, but we used to watch reruns of a cartoon called The Jetsons. And I believe that cartoon came out in the 1960s, so probably the late 60s. I used to watch it as a kid in the 70s and the early 80s. But the only thing that hasn't been commercialized at this point are flying cars, but though they're working on that, there are companies, I forget the name of the company that is pioneering flying cars, and right now the military is really, they have the monopoly on that. But video conferencing, that was a thing in the Jetsons. And we never thought that that would be a reality. It's like video conferencing, yeah, that's some science fiction stuff. But look at us now. I mean, it's started with, like, commercially, that is, Skype, then Zoom, then Microsoft Teams, then FaceTiming. So it's ubiquitous now. It's everywhere. So, yeah. Key takeaways from what I've written 7 years ago is that clones, if they're not a reality right now, they will be a reality. And when I'm saying clones, because they already cloned science has already published information about them cloning a sheep named Dolly, and I believe this was back in 1997. So if they cloned a sheep in 1997, which was 27 years ago, come on now. You don't think they're cloning humans? Now, that's conspiracy theory, but what's the difference between science fiction and reality? It's only a matter of time. So if we're talking about Rose's law, quantum computing, doubling every 3 months, artificial intelligence, look, I don't want to scare you, but let's move on. Now, I'm just picking up, this is one of my journal entries from 2019. I opened it up right now. And this is not all I write about. I don't always jot things down about multiverses, parallel universes, science fiction type stuff, but a lot of times I do. And I wrote down just universes, observable universe, multiverse. There are 3 models. One is the bubble universe. Number 2, membranes and extra dimensions. Number 3, many worlds. If you go back on some of my videos, I talked about the many worlds theory. I think it's Hugh Everett III. Correct me if I'm wrong, or forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's his name. He was the quantum scientist, quantum physicist that created the many worlds theory back in 1957, which back then it was, I think he was considered a quack, but today there is he's been vindicated, and that's a legitimate theory, the many worlds theory, which kind of leads to our understanding, even though it's still theoretical, our understanding of the parallel universes and essentially the multiverse. But by opening these portals, which is what CERN has been doing with that Large Hadron Collider, which is a particle accelerator, which is crashing these particles together, trying to find the smallest particle. I believe, from my understanding, one of the smallest particles is called a neutrino, but I'm sure they've found smaller and smaller particles since then. See, probably in the 1940s or 50s, that's when they start teaching the kids in school the concept of atoms, right? Atoms, protons, neutrons, and electrons, right? Because those were the smallest particles that were discovered. And was it Watson and Crick, the scientists that discovered those particles? And allegedly they discovered and they won a Nobel Prize for this, but allegedly they discovered this while under the influence of LSD, which opened their minds to these possibilities. I believe it was Watson and Crick, unless they discovered DNA, but I believe so. But see, I don't have those notes in front of me. I'm not Googling things right now. But my point is, these concepts that we now know as legitimate, those protons, neutrons, and the electrons that are circling around, that nucleus, those used to be the smallest particles. They found particles much smaller than that. And from my understanding, what they are discovering is that the smaller they go, the more it relates to the larger, the macro, which is the universe itself, or galaxies. So, as above, so below, right? Science is now intersecting with spirituality, because that is a spiritual axiom. I believe that was talked about during the times of the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Hindus, the Bhagavad Gita, and even the ancient Hebrew text of which we call the Bible, the Holy Bible. As above, so below. So science is really proving what spirituality has been saying for thousands, at least thousands of years. So the whole concept is fascinating, just science, because science really is trying to catch up with, and I keep calling it spirituality, but it's really reality. Science is really trying to understand what reality has already put out there for us. And until we understand, and until we can, when I say we, our society can break it down into like little components to study, kind of like car parts. Oh yeah, you got to study the carburetor. You got to study the radiator. You got to study the engine. And even though it's all holistic, they break it down into parts. Until they can break it down into parts, it's truly a mystery. And that's what the universe is. The universe is a mystery. And my goal is to first understand it, and then second, explain it in ways that you can understand it as well. So bear with me, because I'm a work in progress. Let's see. All right. Looking at one of my entries from May of 2020. For some reason, I was listening to Gil Scott-Heron. I wrote this down. Winter in America, 1974, right? So that was 50 years ago. And then what I wrote down, because my dad, he actually just sent me this. Sometimes my dad sends me random old school music from the 70s, for the most part, 60s and 70s. But he sent me Winter in America by Gil Scott-Heron. And I listened to it, and I don't know if I'd ever heard it before that. But check it out if you haven't. And what I said is it's relevant for what's going on today, and it's nice and soulful. So anyway, that's a side note. But right afterwards, I talked about drone swarms. So in my book, LUCID, available on Amazon.com, or you can reach out to me on my website, lucidfuturism.com, and go through and email or DM me, and I can get you out a signed copy. But one of the characters in the alternate universe called Solar City is an artificial intelligent drone by the name of MAC, M-A-C, Machine Architected Consciousness. And he is part of a drone swarm. And I say he, but it is part of a drone swarm. And I believe I got that idea, not necessarily the drone itself, but the drone swarm, from research that I did back in 2020. And what I said is drone swarms are multiple unmanned platforms and or weapons deployed to accomplish a shared objective, with the platforms and or weapons autonomously altering their behavior based on communication with each other. Each drone in a swarm is propelled by a specific number of rotors and has the ability to vertically hover, take off, and land, VTOL. In parentheses. The flight of the drones is controlled either manually, i.e. by remote control of operations, or autonomously by using processors deployed on the drones. So Mac in Lucid, he's autonomous. And not only is he autonomous, he is an artificial intelligent entity, and he is advanced AI, meaning he is sentient. He is aware that he exists. So he is a drone, but he has personality. So he also breaks off from the drone swarm because he is autonomous. The drone swarm, they are not, the rest of the swarm, they are not autonomous, but Mac is. And, you have to read the book to kind of understand why and, how that plays into everything. But yeah, I think that was the genesis of that idea. So I wrote that down in my notes. So what I'm doing, I'm not going to go through all my notebooks, but this is what I'm doing today. I'm just re-mining a lot of the ideas that I've already written down, because this is going to come in handy for books 2, eventually book 3, some of the spin-offs that I have already planned. I've already written them down. I've already written elements of this down. And it's ongoing. It's an ongoing process. So go ahead, please keep a journal if you plan on being a writer, because it's very important. It's not only therapeutic, because it helps get things off your chest. Helps you to, it's like a form of therapy. You're talking to yourself, but it also allows you to, it's a brain. It's a second brain. It helps you to remember things that you will really forget unless you write it down. It helps catalog ideas that you've had in the past. And you never know when you're going to use them or when you're going to need them. All right. So yeah, that's all I have for today. I got a lot of work to do, but stay curious, stay conscious, stay blessed, stay motivated, stay inspired, and above all, stay lucid. Peace out.